But because the first one was such a short chapter, I just kept them all as little chapters.
Yeah.
So, I release them about every 6 months.
And they're both available on Amazon?
They're available everywhere. Barnes and Noble. You can, Smashwords is a good website for people who have, iPads or Nooks or any other
Kindles and
e-reader device. Amazon, you can get it on your Kindle. You can download it on, you can get them on my website as PDFs, marielanza.com. You can get them however. But yeah, they're just short. So I have got 5 chapters out there, and I'm thinking I may extend the stories to be a little longer.
Yeah.
So they're a little longer chapters. I don't know how I'm going to continue it. That's kind of up in the air for me right now.
How do you go about, now that there's another chapter or story that's going to follow, the pick up where you left off from your last one? How do you go about do you just pick one night and you just sit down and you start writing? How does the idea come to your mind?
I write every day.
Really?
Yeah. I keep
at
notebooks.
nighttime?
So I have a notebook in my bag right there.
Yeah.
And all it is brain vomit.
Yeah. You just brainstorm.
All I do is, anything, even a phrase will come to my mind and I write it down in a book.
Wow.
And so one of my notebooks, I have just it's literally brain vomit. Whatever hits, I write in the middle, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'll write it down.
Wow.
And so I just keep that. And then I email myself a lot.
Yeah.
Of more thoughts. And then I, with the baby, my husband and I had to have these compromises on when do I get these huge blocks of time.
Yes. Yeah.
Because right now it's every how I get when I get the time I get it. But so my time devoted to just sitting down and working is every night, every single night.
And what time do you get to writing when your brain just goes at 9 o'clock?
9 p.m.
Yeah.
Every single night. The baby goes to bed.
Yeah.
The husband is in bed. And no one gets to bother me.
So do you take an hour, 2 hours of your time and then just write?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And sometimes more. It just depends on how late I want to stay up.
So do you put together, whatever you have in your notebook, do you just kind of read through it and that's how you come up with the next story?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And I'll write outlines.
Yeah.
And then I'll change them 500 times.
It's just,
I'll change things over and over.
It's interesting to me because I guess when you're creative, when you have that creativity to write, then your brain just flows and you just start, creating and just come up with other stories and scenarios.
There'll be a lot of moments where I'm writing, for instance, I'm writing, I wasn't going to break that news, but I'm writing another, I'm in the process of working on a new project. And there have been times in this one where I'm writing something and I'm that doesn't really fit there. But this whole scenario here would be great as a different,
fit somewhere else.
It would fit somewhere else in another story.
Yeah,
in another book.
So you just kind of take it out and put it back into the
word vomit
the queue
notebook.
where it's waiting.
The queue. Yeah. Put it back in the brain.
Yeah. It's the hold queue.
Yeah. You got to wait your turn.
Not yet. It's don't be so greedy. I know you wanted to be in the story, but it's not your turn yet.
Yeah,
you don't
wait.
fit. Wow, that's interesting. That's so fascinating.
Yeah, it's fun. I love it.
And you've always wanted to write too.
Yeah,
forever. Ever since I've known you, that's what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
Why weren't you doing that back then when we used to work together? I remember that we used to, you would always talk about writing, and Glennis would always say, you need to start writing, you got to take the steps forward, and you got to start doing it. What was holding you back?
Well, nothing technically except work, but I've been writing since I was a teenager, and I went to college and studied it, and then I was writing a lot, but I was writing screenplays. I wasn't writing novels.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until, and so the screenplays and selling scripts in this industry is brutal.
Yes.
And so I've never stopped writing, but it went as my bee life. It went to the sidelines.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I left, I left the station, and it was my husband who said, "Okay, we're going to take a pause here, and you have no need to go back to work until you do and find and you're doing what you love." And that's just that support from him, because I had spent a decade for working for other people and creating for other people with no credit whatsoever.
Yes,
really? You know what I mean?
True, yes.
You know how that is.
Yeah.
So you create all these incredible things, but you're not the one that's ever going to get that recognition,
ever.
right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a soul suck for 10 years. And so when we sat down together, my husband was the one who said, "You have no need. There's no need for you to go back to work. And you need to figure out and find waking up and going to bed completely happy and finding what you do." So I took like 10 months off.
Yeah.
And all I did was write. I released my first novel. Actually, I released the first colony and then a novel.
Yeah.
And then I went back to work, but it was for a really fun TV radio studio.
Yeah.
But I was pregnant at the time. So then I had the baby, and I took some more time off.
Yeah.
I took almost another year off after she was born, and I kept writing. And so now I'm just like in heaven, because I released another novel. I released the second part of Fractured.
Yeah.
The Fractured novels. And so I gotta give him that credit of saying, don't go back to a job just because you think that you need another job.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for him saying that, I think it would have still been my beeline,
That's amazing.
It wouldn't have been what's important to me anymore.
That makes such a huge difference. When you have the support from like someone that you don't have to like go back and work right away.
Yeah.
So you can work on the project that you actually want to do.
Well, and you can be fulfilled. Like, we've gone through some tough times, but it's more like, and we knew we'd have to like take a step back and go, all right, can we really do this? But luckily it's worked out. Luckily it worked out for us.
Yeah.
And it was all because of him. I give
so
him all
nice.
that, like, he's the one who was like, nope. And he's the one every night, 9:00. He's like, all right.
So he actually makes sure that you are going to start writing.
No, I'm done.
Wow.
Like, there's very rarely he bleeds into my 9:00, but like there's tons of nights he tends to work very late.
Yeah.
But he always makes sure that he is home by 9:00, or he lets me know. I mean, he's just one of those, he's just extremely supportive of my time.
That helps a lot. That's really nice.
I'm very lucky.
Yeah, and he's such a great guy too.
Yeah,
he's really nice.
He's that gym I was talking about.
Yeah.
You got to meet those gyms.
Yeah. Now, does he read your books, before you put them out? Do you hand them to him to read?
Yeah. He criticizes.
Has there been any of them that he's criticized and said, I'm not really sure I kind of like this, you need to change a little bit, but you didn't change it?
Yes. But there are times that he said, you need to change this, and I did change it.
So what's the difference between what made you change the one and then not the other one?
It just depends. There are times that he has a different, so my husband has a very different brain than most people. He has, he's very literal.
Yeah.
So I have to remind him to think like a normal person, because he thinks like, so his brain is mathematics and physics and sciences, and it's very different from mine, where I'm like, everything's great and it's perfect and everything can bend a little, you know, and he's like, no, well, that's not how it would work. And he doesn't, so he has a hard time wrapping his brain around certain fantasy scenarios. And I'm like, but babe, it's not real. Like, remember, this is not real.
Yeah.
So if I say that that's what the problem is, I usually do not take it. But if it's a legitimate, honey, this would not work this way.
Yeah.
And I know, for example, I wanted to write, there's a scene in Fractured the Other Side, which is the second novel, that he said, no, if you ran over stuff like this, the truck would not do that. Like, and he was like, he's like physics, honey.
Yeah,
this would not work that way. And I was like, oh, okay, tell me how it would work.
Yeah.
And so that's when I would follow his.
But even if it was a fantasy.
Because I'm not making flying cars. Like if we were talking about, if I was writing a space novel or a supernatural, where I had a car could go fly and do a bunch of flips and you know what I mean? I would say, all right, let's bend a little. Let's bend the imagination. But this was not an imaginary. I was trying to be real. Like I was trying to say, if a car ran over 100 zombies, what would happen? You know, that kind of thing. For example, that didn't make the novel, but it
is that still on the hold queue?
No, I trashed
that
it.
one. Yeah, didn't make it. It's like, okay, trash. Like, bye.
Yeah, no, I always take it. And I have another creative editor who reads everything.
Yeah,
and he's brutal too. But I appreciate that. If you can't, I love creative. I love creative criticism. Yeah.
That's what makes you grow.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. But yeah, they're good. But I don't take all of his stuff either.
You know what you should do? You should take all his stuff that he has opinions on, and then you should just kind of like do like another, I don't know, like maybe like a knockoff or something, like name it something.
Oh, right.
And then just kind of just for fun,
see what they put together versus me. It's usually like little one-offs that they'll want to switch some words around or they'll want to do, that kind of thing. Or they'll add some scenarios in there. They're good like that, but it's fun.
It'd be interesting to read, what your husband would put together.
Well, a lot of times I sit with him and I like the last time I sat with him, believe it or not, I don't know how to jumpstart a car without or I didn't know how to jumpstart a car by writing it down. So I sat with him and I said, and also siphoning gas out of a car, like putting the hose in, sucking it out. I'm like, would you really suck that hose? What happens when the gas hits your mouth?
You spit it out.
Yeah. So I'll sit next to him and I'll just type as he talks. And so I had, even one of my own sisters wrote me and goes, how'd you know where the battery was in an RV and get that battery into the engine and then jump start it? How did you know how to do that? I'm like, a lot of research, but clearly I went to my husband and asked him.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? Speaking of cars, I just learned, I think it was like 2 weekends ago, I just learned that the cars don't run on battery.
You didn't know cars didn't run on batteries?
No.
Well, electric cars will run on batteries.
Okay, so you know how cars, so what happens is when you start the car, the battery is what assists, I don't know if I'm doing the terminology correct, but you know how when you start the car, the battery is what helps the alternator, get it started. And then once it starts the car, the battery is done.
Yeah.
And it's no longer, you're done. It's your alternator. I didn't know that. I just learned that. Because my dad was, telling me this, and I'm like, what? It's like, I thought the car, the battery used everything with the car.
Oh, at the same time while it was still running.
So I thought that part of the car running, I mean, of course, with the gas and all that stuff, but I thought it was the battery, and my dad was like, no. Once it does that, the battery stays there and it just sits there. Of course, unless you're, the radio or whatever, and I was like, oh my gosh, I did not know that. Isn't that
I don't think I knew that either. I would have to. That's another. If I needed something like that, I would have to research it.
Yeah, that's what he was saying that, and I did not know. And I was like, wow, it's that's just fascinating to me.
Yeah, I wouldn't have known that either.
You're stumped.
But I am. I mean, it's been one of those things. If I was in the middle of something, I would have called him. I would have said, honey, I need you to describe something for me.
Yeah, I didn't know that. To me, was one of those things. Wait, what? I was like, I had no idea. This entire time, I thought it was, the battery.
What do we want to know about cars for?
Yeah, I did not know.
I don't want to know about it. I know how to I know how to jumpstart a car.
Yeah,
I know how to change a tire, but that was only because I wasn't allowed to get my license until I I proved that I could do that.
Wow.
That's the only reason. So that's the